Back to work on the REO. Today I sanded out that sandable primer. You can see where I went through the primer in a few spots, and that's probably because those areas were a little high, and you can see where some pitting was in the metal that the primer filled. I sanded this with 320. I'm gonna re-prime it with the sandable primer and then sand it out, wet sand it with 400 before I paint it. Again, this is the primer I'm using, this high build stuff from SCM, and it's kind of thick, so I do like to make sure it's shook up good. I'll give it 2 minutes on the shaker. You can hear the rattles in there. The paint shaking. Yeah, I took the lights down in the tree and off the garage today before I started working in here. But anyway, we'll get that paint shook up and some more primer, and get some more on the blower housing. There we go, final coat of sandable primer. It looks really good. I did sand the inside of the housing a little bit, and I'll do that again with some 400 because I'm going to paint the inside too. But if you haven't seen the past videos on this engine, go check out the first one I did. It was from an estate sale, and it was frozen sideways down into the ground in a snowbank, and I was able to get it running in that video, but it smoked really bad. The rings are really worn out in it. I took the Dremel and just kind of neatened up that one broken fin just so it doesn't look so bad. So I'm going to prime this with the zinc, with this green zinc chromate primer, and then I'll paint it silver. And that's what I use to clean it up, in a little file and a piece of 320 sandpaper. It came out pretty good, I think. Yeah, I never thought I'd use this paint shaker as much as I do, but I'm gonna give the self-etching maybe a minute or so. I used it yesterday, the self-etching, but it needs to be shook up. I find my spray bombs work better if they're shook well. If I put them in the paint shaker, they just spray so much nicer. It's just day and night difference. That looks pretty darn good. Seeing the cylinder head's ready for paint. This is the next day, so that's dried 24 hours. I found the silver that I'm going to use to paint the cylinder head, and this has been sitting for quite a while, so I'm going to go throw it in the shaker, and I'm going to use my favorite spray gun. Everyone has a favorite spray gun, and I use this gun more than any of my spray guns I own. This is a Badger Model 400. I absolutely love that little gun. I have a HVLP door jam gun, but for some reason I always keep going back to that gun. I just really like it. But this is this color right here. I painted the valance on the Galaxy with it too, because that was originally silver, so I had this, so I used it. And this has been a while, so I'm going to shake it about 5 minutes maybe. Yeah, seeing it's a metallic and it's been quite a while. I'll give it some time. Let it shake up there. Let's see how this shook up. Looks like a nice shaking, and I'm just going to mix this a little bit because I'm only mixing a little bit. I'm just going to mix it directly in the paint cup. I need to get a paper towel and stuff. All right, I'm a little more prepared now. I got gloves, and I brought a doily over so I can wipe up anything that I spill, which is inevitable. I'm going to spill something, but I just want to put a little bit in the bottom. This is, I think, 8 parts. Hang on, I'll look. 8 parts paint, 3 parts reducer, 1 part of this. And I just kind of, from years of mixing it, I can just kind of wing it for little jobs like this. You can see why a quart of paint will last forever, like that REO Green, because it doesn't take much to get paint on my bench, which is no big deal. I oil it, so it should wipe right off, but just like to keep things neat. All right, so I put some paint in the cup. Let me get that out of the way. And let me just set this aside so I can set the lid back on the paint. Now I'll put a little reducer in it. So that's 8 parts. This is going to be 3 parts. It looks like about 3 parts. I'm going to put a little bit of smoothie in it just because I can. Put about 2 or 3 drops in there. And once I put this in, you can't reuse the paint. You have to throw it away when you're done, because this will turn the paint to like a gel after a few days. Eventually it'll totally harden, and I do want to be able to wipe this top off. So this is 1 part. I'm just gonna give it a tad extra just for good measures. Wipe the top off because you don't want this cap hardening on. This stuff doesn't have a shelf life if you leave it in the sun or out and keep it in cool places and keep the cap on tight. Wipe your things so it doesn't get paint everywhere. That's why I put these on. Alright, and then I'll just twirl this around a little bit here. Kind of see what it looks like in there. And then I'll get my I gotta get my regulator out. I forgot to get my air hose with my regulator. Let me do that. It'll only take me a couple seconds here. Give my paint a couple little twirl here again. Alright, I'm going to let that dry about 15-20 minutes, and then we'll come out and put another coat on it. I'm going to take it in to dry. What I'll do is I'll wait until when I touch this, see how it leaves a print and it's just smeary. I'll let that dry until it feels like masking tape before I put a second coat on it. And this is I use this on my bead blast cabinet too, my regulator dryer. When I'm spraying, it's about 60 psi. High pressure, regulated, low pressure, because you get moisture after your regulator. So I got 2 dryers on my paint gun here, and I got a dryer on the outlet of the air compressor. So I got 3 dryers before I go to my spray gun, which is important. You don't want water coming out your air hose. And like I say, I use that with my bead blast cabinet too, because you don't want moisture in your blast cabinet. You don't want to hook your compressor directly to your blast cabinet, because the moisture in your cabinet will make the media go crusty. Let's check the paint now. See, it just feels like masking tape. still getting just a tiny bit on my finger, but not much. But that, I think, is ready for another coat. So we'll take it out and shoot it. Sometimes I put a nut or something in the bottom, but just want to kind of make sure it's still shook up. And if somebody doesn't like it or I don't like it, I always run it back through the bead blast cabinet again, right? That looks pretty good. I think we'll call that good. Yeah, see, didn't use much paint. I definitely overmixed the paint. But we'll find something else that I can spray silver, save wasting it. Cleaning the gun is one of the most important things. I take my gun all apart. I just laid all the rest of the paint on my dirty lacquer thinner can. Some really pretty runs in there. But anyway, I just wanted to show it. I've showed cleaning this gun in other videos, so I'm just showing it apart as I'm gonna clean it and throw it back together. But yeah, you gotta completely disassemble them to clean them properly. I'm going to start on the gas tank now. So the bracket here is cracked from there to there. So I got to weld that up, and I'll do that after I bead blast it and straighten this all out. But it's got a pretty good sized dent right here, and a good sized dent right there, and just a minor dent right there. So let's see what we can... I might be able to go in through here to push this one out, but I might have to use that stud welder for this one. And this one, I don't know, we'll see. May not worry about it a heck of a lot. Alright, I'm going to start bead blasting the gas tank. I got 90% or 80% of the dent out. I was able to get a little tool in through there. I used a pair of channel locks on this side to push out, but there's a crack in the bracket here and there that I got to weld, so I'm going to bead blast this thing first, and then I'll weld it up, and then we'll put a little body filler in it. Yeah, this tank's in really nice shape. It should clean up quick and easy. I'm not going to spend a lot of time showing bead blasting because, you know, I'm sure it's pretty boring for most of you. But you can see it cleans it up pretty quick. I'm not going to show actual welding here, but actually I built this bench myself specifically for welding. And this hood is hinged, so I can undo a little screw right here. See the screw? I can undo that, and this will flop around, and that will hinge down to the back, so I have a complete flat surface. And I welded a bolt for the ground clamp on each end, which I can also hang stuff on, and those are bare metal. Everything else is painted underneath, and I left this bare metal. You can see from the years of welding the pock marks and stuff. But yeah, I made this bench specifically I would weld skigs back onto gear cases on marine out drives. But anyway, we got a crack here and a crack here to... Does it show up? That's the crack, and that's a crack. So I'm going to weld these cracks up and grind them out, and then we can start doing what we need to get this ready for paint. I just gave it a quickie weld up. We'll give that a grind out and ready to start putting a little filler on the tank, what's needed. That's the welder I just used. I ground that weld a little bit, and that's as good as I'm going to do it. You don't even see this in this weld here. It'd be more effort to grind than it's worth, so I'm just going to leave that. And maybe I'll put a little filler around just that little edge there. It's so minor that the primer may even fill that, but I'm going to get this primed up so I can put a little body filler on where I need to. let that dry overnight, and then we'll throw another coat of body filler on the dents, but we'll let that dry overnight first. And on the directions of the can, it states right here, shake thoroughly for 1 minute. And I'll tell you what, if you don't, you get spatters with any of these paints. So all my spray cans go in the paint shaker a minimum of 2 minutes, and they spray. Oh my God, I can't get over how much better these spray bombs spray when you put them in the paint shaker, as opposed to just stand there and shake them. The head is all painted and dry now to the touch and looks good. The rings, I was checking the rings in the piston, and the pistons definitely, I gotta find another piston. The ring gap on that piston, just let that drip out on the carburetor, save wasting it. But the top ring was broken, and that end gap is just excessive, and the piston's worn, so I'm working on getting a good used piston from a guy. Hopefully get one and change the piston. And I have the filler on the gas tank, and I think I'm just going to start sanding that out and getting it ready for paint. We'll give that a final sand, then we can spray the green next. Put a quick second coat just to fill a couple little pits in the filler, and that'll sand out, and then this should be ready for a coat of filler primer. And I'm going to bead blast all the engine bolts. These are the head bolts. These are the crankcase mounting bolts. I'm going to paint these green. These obviously will need to be green to match the green of the block, and I think the contrast between the silver head and the green bolt will look nice, so that's how I'm going to paint these green. These are going to be green. These hold the blower housing on. I think 3 of these hold the blower housing on, and a couple of them hold the those are the rings, those cooling things to this. And so all that stuff's gonna be engine. I'm gonna paint everything except for the 2 intake bolts. These are for the intake manifold. Those I'm gonna buff silver. These are gonna be painted. These are gonna be painted. These are gonna be painted. These are gonna be buffed. And these are gonna be painted green. So everything's gonna be green except for the screws. I'm gonna buff all screws. This little bracket here was for the plug wire, and I think I'm just going to buff that up too, and that'll give me a little contrast. And yeah, the piston, I don't know, it's pretty tired, and it's even got a little wrist pin slap, so I'm trying to find another piston, whether I do or not. If I can't, we'll reuse this one. I'm going to start bead blasting all the bolts. Get the washers too. Alright, well, I'm almost done here, but you get the picture. I'm not going to keep blasting, so you can kind of see what I'm doing here. I finished blasting all the bolts up here for the head and the crankcase and the sheet metal covers. I did both sides of the screws. You can, like when I'm bead blasting, I'll push these out a fair amount, and then I'll blast so I can get up in here in the washers, and then I push them through the rest of the way so I can get the threads too. All these are going to be painted, so I'm going to zinc chromate prime them. All these are going to be buffed with the exception of these two, and I'll give these a quick bead blast and prime too. I got the sump bolts bead blasted. It almost looks like they have a TB stamped into both of them. I don't know if that shows up there or not. Well, another day, got to give it another shaking. Got to keep the paint shook up. Primed up, looking good. You can see the TR on those bolts. These have WB1C on them. Like I say, those have TB. And these don't have anything on them. And the intake ones have TR and nothing. Doesn't take much to shine them up like chrome. Kind of before and after. You saw what effort it took. And then when I wipe that rubbing compound off, like on my sweater, yeah, it shines like brand new. I'll get a little screwdriver or something, get the compound out of the Phillips bit slot, but yeah, it looks really nice with them polished out. I videoed a little bit of just polishing one or two screws just so you could see how I did it. But I think that'll look a lot better with them polished. This, you won't even see these will be behind the flywheel. But you know, it was buffing, so I figured I might as well buff them. But I also ran a tap through all the bolt holes on the whole engine block, so that's all nice and clean. And these are buffed too. Like I say, all that's ready for paint. So let me get the gas tank ready, and then maybe we can paint some green. Got the body work done on the tank. I think I'm just going to go ahead and spray it with the filler primer like I did the shroud. Now that I got to wet sand out yet. I 320'd it once. I'm going to 400 wet sand it. And I'll probably do the same with this. I'm going to spray it with the filler primer. I'll give it a 320 sand, reprime it, and then a 400 wet sand, and then I think everything will be ready for paint. Still wet on this bottom, or well, I guess it'd be the top side of the tank, but this side of the tank, because I put it on much heavier and a lot more. I put a couple coats on this side. I just barely misted, just lightly coated. And so I'll give the whole thing a sand, but yeah, it turned out pretty darn good. I'm happy with the way it looks. I didn't want to prime the cap with metal etching primer because I don't want to fill in all the little ribs and stuff. And there's a couple sharp little burrs on the edge that I sanded off. There's a nick there, but I'm not going to worry about that. But I think the engine's coming along pretty good. The other couple videos I did on this got kind of long, so I think what I'm going to do is edit this video up where I'm at right now. If you like the video, definitely hit the like button. It certainly helps. Share the video too if you would like. And if you like my channel, at 348 engine icon will subscribe you. And thank you for watching my videos.